Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Isaac Christopher Lubogo. Guess what? Today we're going to talk about something very interesting, the law of forensics in Uganda. And the idea is to unravel the threads of justice in terms of a philosophical reflection of forensic challenges in Uganda that have been quite popular in terms of what they call drive-in shooting investigations. We've seen the demise of important people in this country, the likes of, quite a number of individuals whose names I wouldn't want to mention, but we know what we're talking about. We've got people who have got issues where left, right, and center, we've got motorcycle people who left, right, and center shoot people. What is wrong? What is wrong? This is what we're going to talk about. So as I delve into the plague that has actually encompassed our society, and try to give some advice in terms of these incidents that are characterized by perpetrators in terms of weapons and shootings and investigations in terms of forensic requirements. There should be a relentless pursuit in terms of understanding the intricacies that are involved in the ability to navigate the landscape where evidence can actually be as fleeting as the bullets themselves. And that's the challenge that we have as the dilemma in this country. So in the drive-in shootings, many of these perpetrators often strike with alarming swiftness, leaving victims and witnesses stunned in the wake of chaos. The ever-present risk to the innocent lives and the brazen nature of these attacks underscore the urgency in terms of the quest of solution. And therefore, as I explore some of the challenges associated with drive-in shootings, we recognize that there is a heinous form of violence that shatters communities, instills fear, and even leaves behind a trail of unanswered questions. No wonder we've got so many unresolved deaths in this country. So in this endeavor, I must confront a multitude of complexities in terms of ranging from what they call ballistic intricacies of firearms use to the reliability of eyewitnesses' accounts and the enigma of environmental factors and the intricate dance of what they call biological evidence. And that's what I want to talk about in terms of the law of forensics. How do we resolve these unsolved matters? Do we have to go to Scotland Yard? Listen, the primary challenge lies in the piecing together of what they call a mosaic of evidence that is often fragmented in terms of fleeting and distorted by the dynamic nature of the crime. So our journey will take us through a new sense of ballistic analysis in terms of the significance of firearm identification and the pivotal role of timely law enforcement responses. We'll try to explore the reliance of what they call eyewitnesses and the limitations of biological evidence and the intricacies of scent tracking by specialized dogs, what other people would like to call canine, right? So listen. Each piece of evidence, as we examine, will hold a vital role in constructing a narrative in terms of bringing us closer to justice. So as we navigate through these complexities, it is important to recognize that there is no single piece of evidence that can stand alone as a panacea. So for example, in drive-in shootings, in terms of investigation, a symphony of evidence must actually be harmoniously orchestrated to eliminate the truth. Yeah, so our pursuit of justice in these cases is a testament to our dedicated, safeguarding of our communities and upholding the principles of law and order. So as I delve into the challenges, as I said, presented by such scenarios of shoot, drive, or motorcycle, whatever we want to call them, I will embark on a journey that requires an unwavering commitment into meticulous analysis of a collaborative spirit among law enforcement, as I said, but more importantly in terms of forensic experts and the community at large. Now let's explore and discuss and reflect upon these multifaceted challenges and potential solutions in these drive-by shooting investigations. By sharing our knowledge in terms of forensic law, that, as I said, we have a book that's written in terms of forensic law, we will strengthen our resolve to try to bring these perpetrators to justice and also provide solace to the victims and their families. I can mention probably over 10 names of people who have gone through some of the challenges, and we still have unanswered questions. So I would like to thank you for joining me in this endeavor in trying to shine light on the challenges we face and try to forge a path forward in terms of the pursuit of justice and the safety for all of us. In Uganda, as I said, there has been a series of alarming incidents that have been occurring involving multiple individuals being fatally shot while driving their vehicles at relatively low speeds. Remember that, ranging from about 20 to 50 kilometers per hour. And these shootings appear to involve firearms, possibly AK-47s or pistols, and often take place in crowded traffic areas. And their silence, typically riding motorcycles are, at similar speeds, usually carry out these attacks at very close range. And that's a dilemma. So the modus operandi of the perpetrators involving firing bullets into the victims' vehicles frequently result in shattered windows and tragically fatal injuries to the occupants. And these incidents occur in public settings, as I said, with the presence of other vehicles perhaps, and even pedestrians, that can create chaos and confusion. Now listen, despite the efforts by law enforcement agencies, the perpetrators usually manage to evade capture, and in most cases they display a high level of sophistication, swiftly escaping from the crime scene before even authorities can actually apprehend them. And this has created significant challenges for the police as they struggle to identify and locate culprits responsible for these deadly attacks. Now, in the response to these incidences, the authorities have actually implemented various security measures, including the installation of security cameras and road barricades. However, what happens is that the assailants continue to operate with impunity, leaving the community deeply concerned and fearful for their safety. And that is the dilemma. And that is the reason why I would encourage everyone to have a look at this book called The Law of Forensics in Uganda, because we have the answers. And we could help in one way or the other. Now, forensic experts and law enforcement agencies are grappling with intricacies of these cases to solve these crimes, and they are following a systematic and sometimes a comprehensive approach that involves crime scene investigation, ballistic analysis, trace evidence examination, and even forensic reconstruction. They also consider the use of surveillance footage in terms of what they call forensic imaging and interviews with witnesses and victims, and also collaborations with other agencies and communities, as well as international corporations that have become essential elements of the investigative process. The question, however, is, do we have answers? Do we get solutions? As I said, I can mention over 10 names. There's a book that we have written on what they call unsolved murders in this country. You may want to find it at Lubogo.org or suegeneslawup.com. Now, despite the challenges and complexities of these cases, the determination to bring perpetrators to justice remains unwavering. Law enforcement agencies are continually adapting their strategies, sometimes engaging public and even using available resources to solve these disturbing crimes and restore a sense of security to these affected areas. Now listen, solving crime basically involves, especially involving shootings from moving motorcycles, is indeed a challenge and a task. But forensic experts employ various methods and techniques to investigate such instances. So I'm going to take you through what they call a step-by-step process of how forensic experts might approach this scenario. Listen, number one, crime scene investigation. Those of you who are doing investigations, please listen to this. Crime scene investigation. The first step is secure the crime scene to preserve the evidence. I don't know how to say that again. The forensic team should actually ensure that no one contaminates the scene and record everything through photographs and sketches. Collect any physical evidence such as spent cartridge cases, bullets, and fragments from the crime scene. Extremely important. Step number two. Listen very attentively. Ballistic analysis. Now, the collected bullets and cartridges cases can actually be analyzed for ballistics, and this includes matching the bullets to specific firearms through examination of refiling marks, firing pin impressions, and breech face masks. Very, very important. Listen, cartridge cases can be compared with databases to potentially identify the firearm used in the previous crimes. And needless to point out that some of these guns that they discover actually are the very guns that have been doing the same things on and on. Number 3, trace evidence analysis. Trace evidence such as gunshot residue, what they call the GSR, on victims' clothing and vehicle interiors can actually be analyzed to determine the proximity of the shooter and the type of firearm used. So GSR may also provide information about the shooter's location in relation to the victim. Extremely, extremely important. Number 4, forensic reconstruction. Forensic experts can actually reconstruct the crime scene by analyzing the trajectory of bullets and impact points. Now, this can help determine the positions of the shooter and the victim at the time of the shooting. They can also analyze the pattern of shattered glass and bullet holes in vehicles to gain insights into the shooting angles. And these are very basic things that you can resolve without even making a lot of hullabaloo. Number 5, surveillance footage analysis. You're gonna tell me, Brother Isaac, they fidget around and erase. If available, forensic expert can actually analyze surveillance camera footage from the area. They may attempt to identify motorcycle riders and their movements before and after the incidents. And this argument of Big Brother, the idea of camera everywhere, should be able to resolve that puzzle. Number 6, forensic imaging and reconstruction. The utilization of what they call 3D imaging and modeling technology to recreate crime scene in a digital environment. This can aid what they call visualizing and understanding the shooting sequence and the trajectories. All the things are resolvable. So that's why we're asking ourselves, why do we still have these unanswered puzzles? Number 7, interviews and witnesses. Interviewing surviving victims, eyewitnesses, and anyone who might have actually seen or heard anything related to the incident is extremely important. Statement from witnesses can provide crucial information about the shooters. The motorcycles used, for example, and any unusual, behavior leading up to the incident is extremely important. Number 8, this is what we call database searches. Compare the gathered information with criminal databases. There should be a criminal database, including known offenders, stolen motorcycles, for example, and previous similar incidents. Because every time we see these shoot-ons, they are almost a replica of something that has happened before. I mean, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. Number 9, forensic accounting. Investigate any potential financial motives behind the attacks, such as disputes or debts or even rivalries. All these are potential. In law, you could call them substantive mens rea. Yeah? And then number 10, collaboration. Forensic experts often collaborate with the law enforcement agencies or intelligence agencies and other specialized units to piece together information and track down these suspects. This is extremely, extremely important. Number 11, public awareness and tips. Goodness me, you just cannot ignore the public. Encourage the public to come forward with any information about the incidents. Sometimes citizens can actually provide valuable leads. You just do not take those guys for granted. Yeah? Number 12, legal proceedings, which should be fundamental. If suspects identified and apprehended, and I'm using the word suspects because of the presumption of innocence, yeah, in criminal law, someone is innocent until proved beyond what? Reasonable doubt. So their firearms can actually undergo what they call forensic examination to confirm their involvement in the shootings. Yeah, it's not just a question of getting hold of people because they have beard X and assuming that they are the ones. So it's important to know that solving such cases can actually be time consuming and may require the combined efforts of multiple experts and agencies. Additionally, the success of the investigation can depend on the availability of evidence and the cooperation of witnesses and the public. Number 13, what is what they call forensic psycholinguistics and behavior analysis. It's important. The meaning of this is to identify, okay, in terms of the identity of the suspect remains unknown. So forensic expert may analyze any written or verbal threats, messages, or communication left by the perpetrators. Extremely, extremely important. Yeah, in terms of behavioral analysis, they can also develop what they call profiles of potential suspects basing on the nature of the attacks and the patterns of behavior exhibited in the crimes. Super, super important. Number 14, mobile phones and cell tower analysis. Another super important aspect. Analyze mobile phone records and cell tower data to track movements of suspected or even potential witnesses in the vicinity of the crimes. The modern, these so-called modern phones record may also reveal connections or communication between suspected victims and even suspects. Yeah, and even now that we celebrate that we have what, a satellite, some of these things should be called to use accountability in terms of that. And then number 15, uncover what they call undercover operations and informants. Law enforcement may actually use undercover officers or informants to gather information from criminal networks or individuals involved in similar activities. Super important again. CIA does that. Yeah, KGB used to do that. Yeah, and even the Israelites, Mossad. And then number 16, community engagement and outreach. Engage with local communities to build trust and encourage residents to report suspicious activities. Community policing efforts can actually yield valuable tips and information. That becomes extremely important. And then number 17, what is what they call interagency cooperation. Cooperate with various agencies, including intelligence agencies, to assess the potential in terms of security threats and national security implications. There was a problem in the US, if you remember, during the time of the 9/11, where there was a disconnect between the different agencies. But that awoke them. Now they had to have a resolve in terms of understanding the connection, why it's important for them to have a connection. So another is this cold case reviews. Revisit these unsolved cases from the past to share similar characteristics with the recent shooting, in terms of advances in forensic technology, but also in these that could help to solve some of these older cases. So even those cases that may not be resolved up to date can be resolved on the basis of what is happening today. And then you could also use number 19 as a forensic computer analysis. Examine any digital evidence, including social media, posts, or online activities. Yeah, Al-Qaeda used to do that, and they could leave tracks. Communication, they may provide insights into the suspect's identity or even motives. Yeah, and some people could do that, and we could have, that could be a good way. There's also what they call forensic accounting and financial analysis. Investigate financial transactions and assets on potential suspects to identify any unusual or suspicious financial activities that may link them up with the crimes. Super, super important as well. And of course, public awareness campaign, something like I'm doing right now. Continue to raise public awareness about the incidents, the potential dangers, and the importance of reporting any information to law enforcement. It's extremely, extremely, extremely important. Yeah. And then another important aspect would be in terms of legal action and prosecution, just like I mentioned in terms of prosecution. Once suspects are actually identified and evidence actually gathered, and I'll take you through some of the evidence that's extremely important, is pursue legal actions against them, including arrest, charges, and even prosecution. As I said, of course, be mindful of the presumption of innocence, not so as provided for in the Constitution, but also the proof beyond reasonable doubt. So solving such complex and recurring crimes, as I said, requires multifaceted approach that combines forensic science, traditional investigative techniques, community involvement, and interagency collaboration. So the process may take time, but the goal is to identify and apprehend the perpetrators and ensure the safety and security of the affected community. And this is something that we're laboring with as a country, because we are seeing a replica of the same thing, and almost the pattern is the same. So I'm asking myself, what's the problem? International cooperation, perhaps. I know we sometimes go to Scotland Yard, but listen, if there's a reason to believe that the suspect may actually have crossed international borders or have connections abroad in terms of law enforcement, then these agencies may seek assistance, from them for purposes of international counterparts and even organizations like Interpol. That's another aspect. I know we have Interpol here, but perhaps it's important that we use it on a broader perspective in terms of resolving some of these challenges. And then reward programs is super important. Knowing how much poverty strikes us left, right, and center, offer rewards for information leading to identification and capture of these suspects. This can actually incentivize, or even individuals with knowledge about the crimes that are about to happen, or even that have come forward, and that's another important aspect. And then forensic, what they call the forensic toxicology is another aspect. If they are suspicious of poisoning or even chemical agents used in the attacks, then we have to use forensic toxicologists, that can analyze biological samples from victims in terms of the presence of these toxic substances. And that's another aspect that we have to, again, super engage in, because we have also had significant and substantive individuals who have been affected in that area as well in terms of poison. And then expert witnesses. In the event of arrest, for example, or trial, forensic experts may actually be called upon as expert witnesses to provide testimony about the evidence and the forensic analysis that has been conducted during the investigation. Super, super important aspect. The things that I'm talking about here, listen, are do or dies for our country, because we know what has been happening. I'll not mention names, but you know what's happening in this country. You know who has been shot left, right, and center. In terms of victim support and counseling, another aspect, provide support and counseling services to victims and their families to help them cope with psychological and even emotional trauma resulting from these attacks. How many times have we seen that happen? How many times we go to these families and actually do give them counseling, in terms of psychological, help. And another aspect in terms of review of security measures, there should be a review. Conduct comprehensive assessment of security measures in these affected areas, including the installation of additional surveillance cameras, for example, or deployment of enforcement personnel, and even traffic management. Especially because that will help us to curb some of the challenges. Another aspect is in terms of what they call media engagement. Work with media to disseminate information about investigation in terms of suspects and any updates, in terms of public pressure and media coverage that can sometimes lead to tips in terms of information gathering or even volunteering information. As I said, all the things that we're talking about are in our book, The Law of Forensics in Uganda, a proof beyond the shadow of doubt. We have everything with us, but we're not taking advantage of it. Continue monitoring. Maintain vigilance in terms of continuing monitoring for any signs of similar incidents, even after suspects have actually been apprehended or the investigation is still ongoing. This must be continuing. That's the only way we're going to resolve this puzzle. And then we need task force or special units, rather than getting other funny, units that with different names. How about getting forensic task special units? Consider information with specialized task forces that are dedicated to solving these types of crimes. Such units can focus exclusively on these cases and even pool resources and even expertise. I know we have a semblance of a university, so I'm told, that does forensics in this country, but how what? How adequate is it? How substantive is it? In terms of legislation and policy development, we need review and update laws, policies that are related to firearm control, motorcycle registration, and other relevant areas to prevent future incidents on this kind of nature. All these things, as I said, are possible. How about public safety awareness programs, educating the public on safety measures such as avoiding crowded areas during high-risk periods, or being cautious on the road, and reporting suspicious activities. All these things are substantively important. Resolving these puzzles, these unsolved matters, as I said, solving and preventing crimes like the ones described, as I said, is complex, but is an ongoing process. It requires, as I said, dedication, collaboration with the law, in terms of enforcement agencies, in terms of forensic experts, community members, and other stakeholders. So the ultimate goal is to bring the perpetrators to justice and enhance public safety and reduce likelihood of future incidents. Super, super, super important. I'm going to go a little bit deeper so that you may want to comprehend a little bit of forensics in terms of how to, to demystify some of these components. As I said, without mentioning any name, the people who are fallen culprit of some of these motorcycle sagas. And in terms of understanding my discourse, unveiling the power of forensic science, solving serious crimes and ensuring justice, we have to comprehend from the word go that at the serene heart of East Africa our country, Uganda, obviously, as a nation, is blessed with natural beauty, no doubt, in terms of rich, cultural heritage. Yet, as I said, amidst the splendor of its landscapes and the vibrance of its communities, there lies unsolved mysteries of cold matters, and this is what I'm talking about. Cases that have haunted families, communities, and criminal justice systems for far too long, my friend. So solving cold matters in Uganda is a task that calls for unwavering dedication, resourcefulness, and commitment to justice. These cases, once considered lost to the annals of time, are always forgotten. So in this discourse, as I said, my emphasis is to embark on a journey to explore the methodologies, the challenges, the collaborative spirit required to rekindle hope, provide closure in terms of grieving family, but above all to bring these responsible for the heinous crimes to account. The argument here is that Uganda's commitment to justice should know no bound. Through innovation, through collective effort, we should aspire to illuminate the shadows of the past and honor the memory of the victims who await justice. And that is predominantly what is in our book called Unsolved Cold Matters in this country, because I want to blend that book together with this other one of the law of forensics. So cold matter cases linger shadows from the past and they haunt the halls of justice. So the cases represent, as I said, unsolved mysteries where the passage of time has actually obscured vital clues and families have been left in agonizing uncertainty. So however, solving these cold matters is not something that is unsurmountable, for example, task. It requires dedication, it requires innovation, as I said, collaboration efforts between law enforcement, forensic experts, and the community. So, as I said, I will give some methods and strategies that can help to breathe new life into these chilling investigations and bring closure to victims and their families. So by shedding light on these techniques by way of technology, by way of approach, in terms of that is available today, the argument here is that we can take a meaningful step towards achieving justice for those who thought justice had actually eluded them forever. Yeah? We could argue in terms of forensic dogs that are often referred to as sniffer dogs. We use them here, left, right, and center, but how often do we get results? Because they should be trained to detect and locate specific scents related to criminal activities, such as drugs or even explosives and even human remains. Yeah? The dogs have highly developed a sense of smell and are used by law enforcement agencies to aid in terms of the investigation. And the synonym here is the word canine, which is a term commonly used to refer to police or working dogs, particularly those involved in law enforcement activities. The K stands for canine, which means dog, and 9 is often used to denote it as a 9th letter of the alphabet. Therefore, canine essentially means canine unit or police dog. So these dogs are highly trained and are used in various roles, including tracking, search and rescue, narcotics detection, explosive detection, and apprehension. And they play a vital role in assisting law enforcement agencies with their unique abilities, particularly in their keen sense of smell and agility. One person told me that when they used to smuggle certain things, they used to go to the forest and get the urine of lions and sprinkle them over these narcotics. And when the dogs smell, they just run away because they realize something bigger than them. Maybe it's time to think outside that as well. But the argument here, what are some of the procedures that we're going to employ when you're doing some of these investigations? As I said, crime scene preservation. Remember that. Secure the scene. Establish a perimeter to prevent unauthorized access and contamination of the evidence. Document the scene is extremely important. Very important. Photograph and do a sketch of the entire area to capture the initial condition. Number 2, collect physical evidence using proper techniques to collect and preserve physical evidence such as DNA, fingerprints, and even trace materials. DNA is extremely important, fingerprints extremely important, and even trace materials is extremely important. Maintain a chain of custody in evidence is extremely important. Ensure that the evidence is properly documented and tracked to preserve the integrity of the court. Because when you go to court, it's going to be a big battle right over there. Number 2, ballistic armory preservation. Secure the armory. Limit access to authorized personnel only to prevent theft or even tampering with firearms and even ammunition. Yeah. And it's also important to do what they call regular inspections. Conduct routine inspections to ensure firearms are in good condition and properly stored. That is extremely important. Record keeping. You are the guys who own the guns. You are the guys who keep the guns. You are the guns who license the guns. You should have proper record keeping. Maintain proper records of these firearms. Do a firearm inventory in terms of serial number and ammunition stocks. You should be answerable. Secure storage. Store firearms and ammunition locked cabinets in safety to prevent unauthorized access. You are answerable at the end of the day as government, because you are the people who have these things. The ordinary man doesn't have them. Proper preservation of both scenes and ballistic armor is crucial to ensure the integrity of evidence and the security of firearms and even ammunition. Yeah, so it's extremely important, my friends. Now listen, the law and preservation of crime scenes, as I said, are essential components of any criminal investigation to ensure the collection of accurate and admissible evidence. And I'm going to give some aspects that we need to consider when we are arguing in terms of that direction, because you see, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove in court at the end of the day. Remember that. To the legal framework, the legal standards and procedures for preserving a crime scene may vary, of course, depending on jurisdiction, but they generally share common principles. So the initial response for most law enforcement officers are typically to find, first of all, what do you call it? The crime scene, yeah, or arrive at the crime scene, yes, or at the scene of the crime, and your primary duty is to secure the scene to prevent contamination or tampering. That is super important. Establishing the perimeter in terms of limiting access and preservation of the scene is integral and very, very crucial. Never forget that. Number three, documentation. As I said, thoroughly document the crime scene through photography, through sketches, through notes. This documentation provides a visual and written record of the scene's condition. Record details such as the location of the evidence, the position of the object, and any potential signs of struggle. That is simple as that. These are basic things that we need. I think we need, what do you call it, a refresher course for almost all these individuals who get involved in these things. Evidence collection. Yeah, properly collect, handle, and preserve physical evidence, including DNA and fingerprints, weapons, and even trace materials. Rather than struggling with DNA in terms of so much of whether child X belonged to Y, how about resolving these puzzles using DNA, where people have lost families and their loved ones? Use appropriate techniques to avoid contamination and even maintain the chain of custody. As I said, in evidence, chain of custody becomes extremely important. You lose that, you may lose that in court. It's not what you know, it's what you can prove in court. Crime scene preservation. Preserve the scene as close as is in terms of its original state as it was before. Avoid unnecessary movement or alteration of evidence. Maintain control over who enters the crime scene to prevent contamination. Once contaminated, you lose. Some of you know that argument of O.J. Simpson case. Once the scene is contaminated, there will be so many theories. Yeah, expert assistance. Sometimes in complex cases, seek forensic expert. Such as scientists or even entomologists or ballistic experts that may actually be called to assist in terms of evidence collection and analysis. You cannot do it except that, yes, we may need some help. Legal requirement in terms of admissibility of evidence in court is subject to rules of evidence, including relevancy, including authenticity, and the chain of custody. You miss that, the evidence must be properly documented and handled with legal scrutiny. That's extreme. That's why we need lawyers in these sections of the police investigation units. Serious lawyers, by the way, and professional lawyers who are trained to help. They may not carry the gun, but to give, to help in terms of these things. How about prosecution and defense? Properly preserved and documented crime scenes can actually be crucial for both prosecution and the defense in terms of building their respective cases. The defenses may also have the right to examine this, the crime scene and even challenge the evidence on different theories. Go and look out for the movie called The Run of the East Century, or the life of O.J. Simpson. How that case was lost on technicalities, basically. Continue training. Law enforcement personnel and forensic experts should actually receive ongoing training to stay updated on best practices and legal requirements to preserve crime scenes. And that's the point I'm trying to say. We need refresher courses for all of you guys. All of you guys. All. Beginning from the powers that be. Okay? Now, preserving, again, crime scenes in accordance with established legal standards is fundamental in terms of criminal justice process. It helps to secure the evidence that is collected in a manner that is both scientifically sound and legally admissible. As I said, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. Ultimately contributing to the pursuit of justice. Because if you don't do that, then people are going to hold you culpable for what? Human rights abuses. Yeah? And victimization of individuals. Again, look at stereotypes. My book on stereotypes. Islamization as a stereotype. Yeah? So, properly preserving a crime scene ensures the integrity in terms of the evidence and contributes to thorough and accurate investigation. And I'm going to give you some considerations on how preservation of scene should actually happen. Number one, when you're preserving a scene, as an initial response, law enforcement officers are typically the first to arrive at the scene, and their primary duty is to secure and protect the scene. I've said that on and on and on, but I'm also saying, because I know the importance of it, secure the scene involving creating a perimeter, limiting access, and also preventing contamination. Not so. Safety is another aspect. Safety, safety, safety. Ensure the safety of all personnel at the scene, including the victims and the witnesses and law enforcement. I know we have witness protection units here, but it's another question, it's another debate, it's another issue. Yeah, addressing any immediate medical needs, for example, another question in terms of our health units, and providing assistance as necessary. You remember one individual was shot. It took almost what, 10 minutes until the guy had to say, guys, I'm losing blood, I'll die because of loss of blood of my body. All those things are important. Documentation, documenting the crime scene thoroughly through various means, including photography, sketches, and even detailed process notes. Photographs, as I said, should capture the scene as it was and these days there are smartphones left, right, and center. Yeah, and all these things can be done. And we pride ourselves, as I said, with having launched a satellite for what, or even having these big cameras left, right, and center for what. Let's see how those things can help us solve these puzzles. Evidence identification. Identify and mark potential items for evidence. Marking, yeah? These may include weapons, blood stains, fingerprints, or even trace materials. Even something as simple as a nail what? Fragment, yeah? A nail fragment that has been off or a rub off. Use appropriate marks or tags to label and even document the location of each piece of evidence, yeah? It's extremely important. Evidence collection is super important. Collect and handle physical evidence following proper protocol. This includes using gloves and other protective gear to prevent contamination, rather than just simply going with your bare hands and then you contaminate the scene with your fingerprint. Yeah, use gloves. Use appropriate tools. Techniques for evidence collection, such as swabs for biological samples, or even evidence bags for items with trace, evidence. It's extremely important. Yeah, and then there's what we call crime scene preservation. That is again super important. Preserve the scene as close, as I said, as it was in its original state as possible to avoid unnecessary movement or alteration of evidence. Yeah, maintain control over who enters the crime scene to prevent the contamination. But here, because Colonel X or General Y or what, Advisor Z, they just walk in anyhow and they end up contaminating the scenes. Let the people who are supposed to do their job do their job. Okay, and then chain of custody. Establish and maintain a clear chain of custody for all collected evidence. These records who have actually had possession of the evidence, and when, in terms of the chain of custody, documentation becomes crucial for establishing the admissibility in terms of the evidence in the courts of law. Yeah, as I said, it's not what you know; it is what you can prove in court, and the argument is beyond reasonable doubt. That's how high the thing is. In terms of expert assistance, I cannot superemphasize. As engaged expert, forensic scientists, entomologists, ballistic experts that can be called in for for purposes of collecting evidence. If you don't have them, train them. Send some of us to be trained on higher levels. We can help you, the police and government. Your Excellency, I am here volunteering, to help you in resolving some of these puzzles, so that we can have answers to some of these solutions, some of these challenges that are eating our nation left, right, and center. Yeah, we are a research center, but we have substantive individuals who are willing to do the job. We are throwing this challenge to you as a nation, as a country, that we are volunteering to do the job for you. We have written, now we are ready to demonstrate. Enforcement officers, personnel, forensic experts, all those arguments, would like to do them. Give proactive encouragement to some people like us and others who are willing to shed light on some of these issues. We have shed light on almost every novel situation, beginning from cyber to oil to constitutional mandates, to you go to lubogo.org or sugeneslawup.com. We have about 50 books now running, groundbreaking areas, in spite of the challenges that people still hit us left, right, and center. You are on petty things, by the way, forgetting that sometimes discourse or information should be given, notwithstanding the substantiality of it, in terms of substantive justice should not be denied because of technicality. Yeah, so thorough and accurate investigation becomes extremely important in terms of methodological and for preservation of these scenes. As I said, initial response and safety, ensuring that all the personnel at the scene, including all enforcement officers, medical personnel, and forensic experts, have actually been well trained and well secured and well dressed up, in terms of preparation, providing immediate medical attention, as I say, to any potential survivor, while preserving the integrity of the scene is extremely important. How ready are our health centers or medical centers or emergency centers or collective centers, or even those 999s, or how fast are they responsive in terms of such documenting these scenes. As I said, the entire scene becomes extremely important. Capturing the overall layout in terms of the position, for example, of the body or potential evidence. The coroner, in my argument, there's a book we argued in terms of the advantage of the coroner, what the coroner is supposed to do in terms of preserving the body. The body belongs to the coroner at that point, not even to the members of families who immediately want to take the body and then use them to their detriment because of struggling. It should be buried in area X. We've heard all those stories in this country. But you look at some of our books in terms of how to preserve a scene and the arguments of the coroner, the use of the coroner as an entity in terms of a mandate of the demise of an individual. It's extremely important. Yeah, using crime scene tape or barriers to mark the boundaries, again, is extremely important. So everyone should be able to know that, by the way, this is a no-go area because it's been preserved. Evidence identification marks, again, super important. Identifying potential evidence, including the body, including weapons, including blood stains. Even a small blood stain can lead you there. Remember the issue of O.J. Simpson, the blood stains that were in the bronca, the blood stains that were on the steps, behind the whatever. All those things could lead to substantive, vindication of an individual in terms of criminality. And then the body handling, as I said, the coroner should be evidently enough. We should have those special people who handle the deceased body with care and respect, avoid unnecessary movement and contamination, document the body's position, the injuries, and any visible evidence that is simply impossible. Important to look at that material time, as possible as you can, engage. That is super important. And then evidence collection, obviously, all that in terms of physical evidence such as biological samples, as I say, the swabs for DNA, trace materials, and any objects that are related to the crime. Using appropriate tools and techniques for collecting evidence to preserve the integrity, as I said. All these things, as I argue them, will be extremely important because, as I said, they will help develop the chain of custody. Yeah, the chain of custody, establishing and maintaining a clear chain of custody for all the collected evidence, record who has actually, in terms of the possession of the evidence and when properly label and package evidence, and even transportation of to a forensic laboratory. The instances where certain evidences that have been kept in laboratories after some time, maybe money or collected money, and then you go back and they can't find that anymore. Or if it was weed or something, and then it was smoked off by certain individuals and it's no longer in those stores anymore. Those challenges, accountability must come into. So forensic experts, involve forensic experts, including pathologists, as I said, forensic anthropologists, and even entomologists, when necessary, to assist with body examination and even the evidence in terms of analysis. And another super important aspect is interviews and statements. Goodness me, you just can't underestimate that. Interviewing the witnesses, especially the first responders, and anyone with relevant information while their memories are fresh. Okay, document statements and observation. What comes out at that material time is extremely important, and that should be documented as fast as possible. We can resolve all these puzzles. We have answers. Take hold of us, take use of some of our books. All these are there. Scene reconstruction. Analyze the scene to reconstruct the sequence of events leading to the fatality. Yeah, consider factors such as blood spatter patterns. Remember the O.J. Simpson issue. The blood spatter issue was an issue. Trajectories in terms of what angle, what speed, the position of the object. It's extremely important. All these aspects have to be brought into question. Yeah, and as a lawyer, of course, legal requirements will adhere to legal requirements in terms of evidence, in terms of preservation, including maintaining proper documentation and chain of custody. I would not super overemphasize that. As I said, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove in court. And in terms of criminal law, it's a question of proof beyond what? Reasonable doubt, not on the balance of probabilities. So in terms of admissibility of evidence, again, there shouldn't be any question or doubt when it comes to that, because people are going to hit you there and throw your evidence out. Continue training. Keep law enforcement officers and personnel and forensic experts updated on best practices and legal requirements in terms of preserving crime scenes in fatalities. Yeah, preserving the scenes of the crime in fatalities requires, as I said, a methodological and even coordinated approach with a focus on maintaining the integrity of the evidence. Thorough documentation, careful evidence collection, and adherence to legal standards are essential to ensure a successful investigation and prosecution if necessary. Listen, as I said, the story of resolving these debacles or challenges will begin with, as I said, securing the scene of the crime. Crucial step, preserving the evidence, ensuring the integrity of the investigation, and again, I'll simply go through some of the steps of how to secure the scene effectively, as if I have not said it. But I know the importance, and I know that personnel, including forensics, or even the police, would like to take interest in some of these arguments. Ensure safety. Safety of everyone should actually be the top priority. Assess the situation for potential dangers and address them immediately. Because if it's a bomb, for example, that has been hit, there could be bomb B somewhere, and as you're fidgeting around, you have not secured the perimeter, and then another one takes off. Yeah. Establish perimeter. Create secure perimeter around the scenes of the crime to limit access of authorized personnel. Use police tape, barricades, or even cones to mark the boundaries clearly, and avoid these big-headed guys. I am your advisor X, I am whatever Y, I am whatever X, who come in and want to be braggadocious to show off, and then end up contaminating the scene of the crime. Control the entry and the exit. Designate a single entry and exit point for authorized personnel, including law enforcement officers and forensic experts, and even in the investigators. Keep a log of everyone entering and exiting the scene. It's extremely important so that you know who is entering and who is actually exiting. Yeah, preserve the evidence. That I don't know how I can overemphasize that. Prevent contamination or tampering of evidence by ensuring that no one touches, no one moves, no one disturbs items at the crime scene. Because sometimes some of these people who come, to as if they are helping or doing what, are the very people who are trying to dismantle or contaminate the scene. Document everything, photograph and take notes. Restrict access, as I said. Keep unauthorized individuals, including bystanders, journalists, and curious onlookers away from the scene. It's extremely important. Keep them away, because when you don't do that, these guys are going to contaminate. Okay, use police officers or personnel to maintain control and even prevent interference. Yeah, again, because I'm coming from an angle of a lawyer, maintaining a chain of custody, establishing the document in terms of chain of custody for all the evidence collected on the scene, because argumentatively, as I said, in criminal law, it's a question of proof beyond reasonable doubt, not so. And that's extremely important, in spite of the fact that there's a presumption of innocence. So ensure that the evidence is properly labeled, sealed, and even stored and maintained with its integrity. Yeah? Secure witnesses. These guys who are witnesses, identify and interview witnesses while their memories, as I said, are still what? Fresh. Keep witnesses separate to prevent collusion or sharing of information. It's extremely important, because sometimes they can be what? Bought off or something like that, and they are, corrupted is the word, perhaps. Yeah? Document entry and exit. Record the names, positions, times of entry, exit of all persons who access the scenes. This information is crucial for establishing the credibility in evidence in court. Whether it is a general whose life has been attempted, let the police do their work. Sometimes we see General X or General Y, as I said, coming in, and then you don't, and they're coming with 1,001 bodyguards, and they're coming with cars that have had, and then you end up contaminating the scene. You lose the track, Preserve electronic evidence in cases involving electronic devices or data. Secure computers, smartphones, and other devices. Prevent tampering with or even remote access to electronic devices. It's extremely important. Yeah? Collaborate with experts. As I said, I don't know how many times I'm going to emphasize that. You have to look out for people who can help you in some of these things. Take people to be trained. Beef up your whatever, your dream team in terms of forensic department of the police. Get them to substantive good schools. Invest in them so that they can go perhaps abroad and benchmark with other countries and learn how to do these things. When you invest in them, they will come back here and work for us better. Invest in some of us who are willing to do some of these things for you if you don't want to do them for yourselves. And these are the challenges and the whatever I'm throwing to His Excellency, the President of this country, that we have answers to solving some of these challenges. As I said, I've written a book on unsolved cold crimes in this country, and so they will argue and say we have answers or solutions, but sometimes making them public in one way or the other also helps, so that the public can be aware and look out for some of these issues. And as I said, most of these challenges that have taken place on individuals have actually been almost a replica of scenes or crimes that have happened before. All these motorcycle shootings are almost the same. So the argument here is that forensic science, as I said, relies on a wide range of tools and techniques in terms of investigating, in terms of analyzing this evidence. So the importance of these tools also vary depending on the type of forensic analysis that is actually being conducted. I'm going to give you some important tools in forensics and their purposes. Yeah, as I said, for those of you who are in forensics and even law enforcement officers who are solving these murders, consider it a refresher course. Microscopes. The purpose, we all know, microscopes are crucial for examining a variety of microscopic evidence, including hair, fibers, blood, and tissues. They help in identifying and even comparing characteristics of these materials. Yeah, and then another tool is what they call the DNA analysis kits. The purpose of the DNA analysis kit enables forensic scientists to extract or even amplify and even analyze DNA from biological samples. So DNA analysis is essential for identifying suspects, victims, and even establishing relationships. Extremely important. Yeah, rather than banning it, I think we'd rather regulate it in terms of more regulatory methods to help us solve some of these challenges. Fingerprinting tools. The purpose of fingerprint analysis includes powders or brushes or chemicals to reveal latent fingerprints on surfaces. Fingerprint identification is a fundamental forensic technique for linking individuals to crime scenes. Okay, and then you could argue in terms of what they call ballistic tools. The purpose here of these ballistic tools, such as a comparison microscopes and gunshot residue kits, they're actually used to examine firearms or bullets and cartridges casings, yeah? And they help to identify weapons used in crimes and even match bullets to firearms. And these are things, again, that are doable and should be done for purposes of establishing, again, the chain of evidence. And then we could also argue in terms of what they call evidence collection kits. The purpose here, these kits contain various tools and supplies for safety collecting and even preserving physical evidence, including swabs and evidence bags and fingerprint lifters. Extremely important. And then you could also argue in terms of what they call gas chromatography. This is what they call gas chromatography, or what they call mass spectrometry, or what they call GSMS. The purpose of GSMS instruments are used to analyze chemical compounds in substances like drugs, toxins, and accelerants, and they help identify and even quantify substances in forensic samples. Yeah. And then another tool that is extremely important is what they call spectrophotometers. Now, spectrophotometers, basically, these ones measure the absorption or emission of light by substances, and they are essential for analyzing blood or even drugs and other materials by examining their spectra, and that's extremely important as well. And then you could also look at what they call forensic software. Software in terms of forensic. Yeah, the purpose here is that specialized software can actually be used for analyzing digital evidence, including computer files, emails, retrieving information, even retrieving deleted information, and even mobile device data that can help in digital forensics and even cybercrime investigation. Yeah, and even breaking codes that have to do with certain phones like iPhones that may be stubborn when it comes to breaking codes. Ask the Americans how they did it when they had the Israel company to do that for them. Lumino and UV light sources, another. These light sources are actually used to detect blood stains and other bodily fluids that may not be visible to the naked eye, and they play a vital role in crime scene investigation. Extremely important. Another tool is what they call toxicology equipment, and equipment such as gas what they call gas chromatographs and mass spectrometers that are used to analyze blood and even tissue samples for the presence of drugs and poisons and even toxic substances. How many times have we had instances of people who claim or allege to be poisoned, whether rightly or wrongly? Perhaps it's time that we revisited some of these. How about forensic anthropology tools? These tools, including osteological kits and even anthropological databases, are actually used to identify human remains and even estimate age, sex, and even ancestry. And they determine the cause of death, by the way. So even when the body is mutilated, you know, you could use those gadgets or those tools to help you to solve those challenges. Digital cameras and audio-video recording equipment is another one. These devices are used to document crime scenes, record statements, and even capture visual evidence, and they're essential in maintaining a visual record of all these events. So listen, my friends, the importance of these tools in forensic science cannot be overstated. They are, you know, they enable experts, as I say, to analyze and interpret evidence accurately, ultimately aiding in terms of solving crimes, identifying these perpetrators, and achieving justice. So the choice of these tools, as I say, depends on specific nature of the evidence and the forensic discipline involved in the investigation. I'm giving you solutions that would help to resolve the so much trouble that we're having in this country of motorbikers coming and shooting and running away, you know, and hurting people. There's what they call breath laser. Breath laser are actually used to measure a person's blood alcohol concentration. They call it BSC, and they're essential for what they call the DUI, driving under the influence investigation. So we could, I know we have a little bit of those, but we need more of those. How about polygraphs? Yeah, what they call lie detectors. Polygraphs machines are actually used in forensic psychology to assess a person's truthfulness by monitoring what they call psychological responses, such as heart rate, blood pressure, and skin conductivity. And they have been seen to give a lot of help, and we could use them as well. How about what we call blood stain pattern analysis tools? Blood stain pattern analysis tools. These tools, including templates and protractors, they help forensic experts to analyze blood stain patterns to reconstruct events and determine the source of blood. Super important argument. So why are we not solving these challenges, guys? Why are we failing to solve when we have all these things at our disposal? I'm challenging you, Excellency. Hire us to do the job for you. Fire investigation equipment, fire investigators use tools like accelerant sniffing, canines, thermal imaging cameras, and fire debris analysis kits to determine the cause and the origins of fire. Hire us. We are making the things plain for you. We are here at your disposal for purposes of helping this country to resolve unsolved matters. How about forensic odontology tools? Yeah, in terms of dental tools and x-rays that are used by forensic odontologists to identify human remains by examining dental records and even bite marks. These are things that we need to talk about and argue. We'll talk about all these things in our book. How about entomology equipment? Entomologists use tools like insect nets and collect vital, what they call virals, to collect and analyze insect evidence and even estimate the time of death or even the location of a crime. These things are doable, Your Excellency. These things are doable, and I'm making a plea to you, Your Excellency, that this is a solution of how to solve cold matters in this country and to solve these, motorbike bizarres. Soil analysis equipment. Soil scientists and even forensic geologists use equipment like microscopes and soil testing kits to compare soil samples from crime scenes to potential sources. These are things that, again, we can do as a country, and they're not far away. Okay, how about voice recognition software? Yeah, voice recognition software can actually be used to analyze recorded voices and even help in speaker identification and voice comparisons. All these things, my friends, are doable. And I said, we are here ready to do the job for you. Give us, I think it was the British who were saying to the Americans during the World War I or II, I think Churchill must have gone to Congress and said, guys, we British don't fear blood. Give us the tools and we shall do the job. How about latent print? These kits contain chemical and tools developing latent fingerprints and surfaces, helping in what they call fingerprint identification. So as I said, these tools and equipment are just glimpses into the diverse array of resources that are available for forensic scientists and even investigators. And the choice of tools, as I said, depends on specific needs of the case and the nature of the evidence that is being examined. So effective utilization of these tools becomes extremely essential for gathering accurate and reliable forensic evidence in criminal investigation. Now, another super interesting thing is the DNA analysis, which again we also talk about heavily in this book. DNA analysis has actually revolutionized forensic science and has actually proven to be exceptionally helpful in criminal investigation. I'm going to give reasons why DNA is crucial in forensics. It's very important because, number one, it helps in identification. DNA can actually uniquely identify individuals. It is highly specific to each person, except for identical twins. So making it a powerful tool for identifying suspects, victims, and unknown individuals associated with crime scenes. And this technology is readily available even in our country. Yeah? How about linking suspects to crime scenes? DNA as evidence can link suspects to a crime scene through the analysis of biological samples such as blood, semen, saliva, hair left at the scene. Super important. All this can be used for purposes of, again, tracing the chain for purposes of evidence. How about in terms of exonerating the innocent? DNA analysis has actually been instrumental in exonerating individuals wrongfully convicted of crimes that they did not commit, and it can prove innocence by excluding suspects as a source of a DNA evidence, as it were. Yeah, DNA evidence, on the other hand, has actually been used to resolve what they call cold case resolution. DNA has actually played a pivotal role in reopening and even solving cold cases. So as technology advances, previously unsolvable cases are actually being revisited with fresh hope of identifying the perpetrators. You excuse me. DNA also can actually be used in terms of identification of human remains. So in cases of involving unidentified human remains, DNA can actually be used to establish the identity of the deceased, talk about the Chibwetele saga, providing closure for families and assisting in terms of investigation. Yeah, and then also in terms of tracking serial offenders, DNA databases enable law enforcement to link crimes committed by the same individual, helping to identify and apprehend serial offenders. I think it's a time this nation rebranded itself. As I said, it's a time this nation, I remember His Excellency, one of the things he said when he had just come into power is that there is no reason for people to be killed and the police or the government should not give answers. I think that's a challenge to Your Excellency today, that we have these people who can do this job. Kinship analysis, DNA analysis helps in terms of family relationship, aiding cases where we can, help suspects to identify family members who may or may not be involved. We could also argue in terms of what they call mitochondrial DNA. Mitochondrial DNA analysis can actually be used when nuclear DNA is degraded or even unavailable, yeah, such as in aged or even in degraded samples. How about in terms of forensic genealogy? Yeah, advances in terms of forensic genealogy have actually enabled investigators to use DNA databases and public genealogy databases to identify suspects or victims in cold cases. That again is another super important aspect that we could also look at. And then obviously in terms of evidence in court, DNA evidence is highly admissible in court and carries significant weight with judges and juries due to its scientific reliability. And that's something that again we need to comprehend and talk about seriously. And then in terms of reducing wrongful convictions, the use of DNA evidence has actually helped to prevent wrongful convictions by providing a more accurate and even reliable means of identifying these suspects. So it's important, my friends, that even as we talk about the law of forensics, resolving these unsolved matters or cold matters or solving these motorbike shootings, driveaways, to emphasize that DNA will do the job. So while DNA analysis, as I said, is a powerful tool in forensics, its effectiveness also depends on the quality of the evidence, the preservation of the samples, the adherence to the proper collection, and the analysis procedures. So when used correctly, DNA can significantly contribute to solving crimes and even ensuring that justice is actually served. As I said, DNA will help trace criminality by providing a unique genetic fingerprint that can actually link individuals to crime scenes and victims and other suspects. And I'm going to try to break down a little bit of how DNA is used in tracing criminality. It does it in this way. Number one, it identifies the suspects. So DNA evidence found at a crime scene can actually be compared on a suspect's DNA profile to determine if there is a match. So if the suspect's DNA matches evidence at the scene, then it strongly implicates the involvement in the crime. Number two, linking multiple crimes. DNA can actually be used to connect an individual to multiple crimes, establishing a pattern of criminal behavior. So this is especially valuable in cases that are involving serial offenders, like the likes of those whose names you've been talking about so much on TikTok, whose names I will not mention. And then the aspect of excluding innocence. DNA can actually exclude individuals who are not involved in a crime. If a suspect's DNA does not match evidence at a scene, it can actually eliminate them as a suspect, helping to prevent what they call wrongful conviction. Another aspect in terms of cold murders, which again, you revisit my book, Resolving Cold Murders in this country, the likes of whose names I will not mention, but you know them. Cold murders, unsolved cold cases, preserved DNA evidence can actually re-examine using modern techniques, potentially leading to the identification of perpetrators who had previously evaded the capture. We can get there in terms of that. And then also DNA can actually be important in terms of victim identification. DNA can actually help identify victims in cases of disasters, mass casualties, or even unidentified remains. It can actually provide closure to families and assist in missing persons investigations. Extremely important. And then the aspect of familial DNA searching. In some cases where a direct match is not found, familial DNA searching can actually be employed to identify close relatives of potential suspects, narrowing down the pool of suspects. It was done for Osama bin Laden, I'm told, to track him down by way of that by the Americans. And then in terms of forensic genealogy, advances in forensic genealogy involving using DNA database, and public genealogy databases to build family trees and even identify potential suspects or even victims is extremely important. So rather than banning it, I would rather you regulate it and help build family trees and legacies, especially for our brothers who may be spread over the diaspora. How about evidence corroboration? DNA evidence can actually corroborate other forms of evidence, such as witness statements or physical evidence, strengthening the case against a suspect. Super important as well. And then DNA can also be important in terms of exoneration. In cases of wrongful conviction, as I said, DNA evidence has actually been instrumental in exonerating innocent individuals by actually proving their innocence. And then we should have a database such as many countries maintain DNA databases of convicted criminals, allowing law enforcement to compare DNA evidences from unsolved cases from profiles in the terms of their databases, potentially identifying the suspects. Here, I'm told you simply call a police officer X and say, by the way, they have stolen my phone. You say, where was it? Said, then he makes a call and said, we're going to no, because I'm told they know the thugs who move around. Rather than doing that, do a DNA database. So DNA becomes a powerful tool in terms of tracing criminality because, as I said, it's of its unique characteristics and its ability to provide scientifically valid and reliable evidence in court. And as I said, it requires careful handling, analysis, and interpretation to be effective when it comes to criminal investigation. Now listen, definitely there is no single best form of forensic evidence that is maybe universally applicable for all cases. So the choice of forensic evidence depends on the nature of the crime and the circumstances of the case and the available evidence. So the different types of forensic evidence serve different purposes and their significance can actually vary. I'm going to give some common types of forensic evidence and their respective strength. And at the same time, I may be able to rank them for you if time permits, so that you may know what is the most important in terms of how to solve these cold murders that we're having in this country. Number one, DNA evidence, as I said, in terms of strength, evidence is highly specific and individualized, making it a very powerful tool for identifying suspects and victims. It's also resistant to contamination and degradation when properly handled and stored. By way of application, DNA evidence is crucial in cases involving sexual assaults, also in other cases of homicides and cold cases and identifying unknown remains. Rather than calling these guys these pigs, let's employ science, as we arguably are told by His Excellency that science is the way to go. These are solvable issues. Fingerprint evidence. The strength. Fingerprints are unique to each individual and can actually be recovered from a variety of services. They are also easily preserved. In terms of fingerprint evidence becoming valuable for linking suspects to the crime scene, identifying victims, and even establishing associations with physical evidence becomes extremely important. Ballistic evidence is another super important evidence. The strength of it is that ballistic evidence, such as bullets and cartridge cases analysis, can actually help identify firearms used in crime scenes and connect them to the suspects. As I said, you are the people who have these things. Accountability becomes extremely important. Application is essential in cases involving shootings, in cases of homicides and firearm-related crimes. These are super important aspects. In terms of trace evidence, another aspect. Trace evidence includes things like fibers or hair or even glass and paint, which can actually link suspects or victims or even objects to the crime. And it can provide valuable insights into movements of individuals. Super important. In terms of application, trace evidence is significant in cases involving physical contact between individuals and the environment. So that's extremely important for you to comprehend. Another that you may want to look at is what they call digital evidence. In terms of digital evidence, as a strength, digital evidence from computer or smartphones and electronic devices can reveal a wealth of information, including communication, location data, and even digital footprints. Yeah, and even tires, keys, and stuff like that. All these things are important. Which direction they took. I can lay, blunt all these things for you by way of forensics. It's crucial in cybercrime investigation, in terms of electronic communication and data analysis, because that's extremely important in that category. Blood stain pattern analysis is another aspect in terms of importance. Blood stain pattern analysis helps to reconstruct crime scenes and understanding the dynamics of violent events. Those of you who watched again the run of his century, O.J. Simpson, you remember Barry Shem, I think the DNA guy, lawyer who argued and used the blood spatter together with the other Chinese American, remember? And in terms of resolving these homicides and assaults involving bloodshed. Yeah, and they can even determine the angle, the speed, the spread, the way they will hit, which direction, the gravity, all those aspects. Footwear and tire thread impressions. These impressions can link suspects to crime scenes, identifying vehicles involving in hit and runs, for example, establishing associations with the footwear or even of vehicles. It's extremely important. It's important in terms of involving burglary or what they call hit and run accidents or footprint analysis. So footprint analysis, again, is another aspect that is extremely important in resolving some of these challenges. So again, the best form of forensic evidence, as I said, depends on the context of the case and the information needed to establish the guilt or innocence. Often it's a combination of multiple types of evidence used to build a comprehensive and compelling case. So the key component is to select and analyze the most relevant evidence for particular investigation to ensure that justice is not only seen, but actually is seen to be served. Not so. You could also argue in terms of toxicology evidence, as I said, the strength of toxicology analysis can actually determine the presence of drugs or alcohol or even poison and other toxic substances in the body. It proves insights into the cause of death or even the cause of the impairment. Application, by web application in terms of toxicology, toxicology evidence is vital in cases involving overdose death or what they call DUI investigations and even poisoning. That becomes super important. Again, another aspect that you cannot ignore is voice and audio analysis, as I told you. The strength in terms of voice and audio analysis can actually be used to identify speakers, analyze background noises, and even detect alterations or even tampering in audio recordings. That becomes extremely important. We have seen people who have lost their jobs because of video or audio tampering. It's high time that we resolve some of these puzzles. It's relevant in terms of involving voice threats or ransom calls or even tampered audio evidence in terms of that evidence. And then firearm and tool mark examination. This basically involves the comparison of markings of fired bullets and cartridge cases to determine if they match the particular firearm or even a tool. By web application, it becomes essential in a way that in cases involving shootings and armed robberies and even tool mark analysis. And then how about talking about handwriting and document analysis? Yeah, as a strength, handwriting analysis can actually determine the authorship of documents, while document analysis can actually identify alterations or even forgery and even counterfeiting. So in terms of application, it's valuable in cases that may involve fraud or ransom notes and even what they call disputed wills sometimes. So some of these things again can be argued out if we have proper analysis in terms of that. And then entomology evidence in terms of entomological analysis, as I said, which uses insects and their life stages to estimate the time of death or the location of a crime. Yeah, and it's used in cases that are involving decomposed bodies and even outdoor crime scenes. That's another important aspect for you to look at as well. And then forensic anthropology, as I argued, as a strength, forensic anthropologists analyze skeletal remains to determine the age, to determine the sex, to determine the ancestry and injuries to aid in identifying individuals. By way of application is actually crucial in cases involving unidentified remains, mass disasters, or even historical investigations. And then you could also argue as well in terms of what they call video surveillance footage. Video footage can actually provide visual evidence in terms of events, in terms of movements, in terms of interactions, and it can also identify suspects or witnesses. And by way of application, it's essential in cases that involving robberies or assaults and surveillance of what they call criminal activities. And that's another important thing that you may want to look at as well and comprehend. Everything I'm perhaps saying is in our book, The Law of Forensics in Uganda, a proof beyond the shadow of doubt. And you may want to find it at lubogo.org or suegeneslawup.com. As I say, the choice of evidence depends on the specific details of the case and information needed to build a comprehensive and accurate picture of the events in question. And therefore, forensic experts must carefully select and analyze the most relevant forms of evidence to assist in solving crimes and achieving justice. Listen, my friend, numerous fatal crimes have actually been solved worldwide using forensic evidence and even investigative techniques. And I'm going to give a few notable examples of such cases so that we know that we're not speaking out of what? Obscurity or out of ignorance. Some of you may have heard of what they call the Golden State Killer, the so-called Joseph James DeAngelo case. The case basically involved a series of rapes, murders, and burglaries in California during the 1970s and the 1980s. And there was a forensic breakthrough. DNA evidence from crime scenes was actually used to link DeAngelo to the crimes. The outcome was that in 2018, DeAngelo was actually arrested and eventually pleaded guilty to multiple charges, resulting in a life sentence. There you go. I'm going to give you another case that we hope as a comparison, benchmarking in terms of resolving our cases here in Uganda. The O.J. Simpson trial case, which we argue heavily here in our book. Some of you have heard that statement: if the gloves don't fit, you must acquit. The murder of Nicole Brown Simpson and Rodman Goldman in 1994. Forensic breakthrough, blood evidence, including DNA analysis, played a significant role in the trial. The outcome was O.J. Simpson was acquitted in a highly publicized trial, but the cases showcased the importance of DNA evidence in court proceedings. Remember Barishek and the likes. I've talked about that before. Look for that in one of our YouTube. Go to our YouTube channel, subscribe, and find some of those videos there. And then you've heard of the Atlanta child murders. This is called Wayne Williams. The series of child murders in Atlanta in 1979 to 1981. There was a forensic breakthrough. Fiber analysis and dog hair evidence helped link Williams to some of the murders, and the outcome was that Wayne Williams was actually convicted of 2 murders in 1988-82, and is suspected in other cases through, although not all have been officially resolved in that context. Another example would be the BTK killer, what they call the Dennis Rader. It was a series of murders in Arkansas in 1974 to 1991. Forensic breakthrough in terms of Rader's communication with law enforcement and DNA evidence eventually led to his arrest. And the outcome was in 2005, Dennis Rader was actually apprehended and confessed to the murders and even received multiple life sentences. So I'm told JFK murder, also today as we speak. So I'm told Malcolm X. So I'm told my friend and mentor, Dr. Martin Luther King. All those murders could be solved, may be solved. Some answers may be there with the CIA. But also there's what we call the Green River Killer, the Gray Ridgeway, a series of murders in Washington State during 1980s and 90s. Forensic breakthrough, DNA evidence, and advances in forensic technology helped identify Ridgeway as a killer. The outcome was that Ridgeway was actually arrested in 2001 and confessed to numerous murders and is serving life sentence without parole. So as I said, these cases highlight the pivotal role of forensic evidence in solving serious fatal crimes and advances in DNA analysis, forensic techniques, and investigative methods. Perhaps time has come now that resolve some of the cases of the people we know, the generals, the brothers, the RSAs, all the individuals who have actually been killed and who the country has lost. And up to date, we still have unresolved cases involving significant personnel in this country and individuals. And it's not a question of only important people, but everyone's life matters. That's the point that I'm trying to say. So it's extremely important that we resolve these battles by having substantive forensics departments, but also people who are willing, ready, and able to do the job. Some of you may have heard of what they call the Boda, or what they call the Ted Kaczynski. It is a nationwide bombing campaign targeting individuals associated with the modern technology and industrial society. There was a forensic breakthrough analysis by raw evidence, which including bomb components, and Kaczynski's manifesto played a crucial role in his capture. The outcome was Ted Kaczynski was actually arrested in 1996 and convicted, and is actually serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole. And that's again an outcome of how these guys are doing their job, and perhaps something that we need to learn from them. We may have heard of the Zodiac Killer, a series of unsolved murders and taunting letters sent to newspapers and police in California during the late 1960s and early 1970s. Forensic breakthrough in 2018. Think about that, how many years. DNA evidence from Zodiac Killer crime scene was actually used to identify a suspect. The outcome was that through the identity of Zodiac Killer remains publicly unknown, and the case demonstrated the potential of modern forensic DNA analysis. So again, I cannot superemphasize the importance of what forensic science can do for us as a country and as a nation and as a world today. You may have heard what they call the Yorkshire Ripper, what they call Peter Sutcliffe. It was a series of murder and assaults of women in Yorkshire, England during the late 1970s. By way of forensic breakthrough, a combination of forensic evidence, including tire tracks, shoe prints, and handwriting analysis, helped to lead to Sutcliffe's arrest. And the outcome was Peter Sutcliffe was actually convicted in 1981 and actually sentenced to life in prison because of that. You may have heard of the West Memphis 3, where the murder of 3 young boys in West Memphis, Kansas in 1993. By way of forensic breakthrough DNA analysis and the re-examination of evidence contributed to the exoneration of the 3 men who had actually been wrongfully convicted. You may argue and say, I'm talking about only, Western cases, but in our book here, I also make arguments in terms of many cases, by the way, in terms of substantive Ugandan cases that have actually may have attempted to use forensic evidence in terms of resolving some of these challenges. But I would urge you to go through them. I know I've done a YouTube where I've mentioned some of them and made a disposition. But the point today is to try to create some of the different different examples or different scenarios of how we can be able to resolve some of these challenges that are hinting and hurting our country as a nation. I know that we have substantive cases in Uganda, but I think in spite of those cases, that's the point I'm trying to say, we are not yet there, because every now and then we create excuses left, right, and center, and to me that is where we are missing the point. So I said it's important, as I said, to look at some of these cases. For cases of Uganda, you may want to look at Uganda versus Yoweri Nsenga. You may want to look at the case of Godi versus Uganda. You may want to look at the case of Simon Musoke versus Ara. All these cases I've talked about in this book. You may want to look at the case of Uganda versus Gaston Subuga and others. You may want to look at the case of Mbatude versus Uganda. You may want to look at the case of Onek and another versus Omana. So all these cases are here for you, and I've talked about them in this book of the law of forensics in Uganda. Not to say that I'm only relying on cases that are, however. Listen, my friends, it is essential, as I said, to recognize that forensic science is not infallible. Its effectiveness relies on rigorous procedure, ethical practices, and ongoing research and development. And as I say, these cases show us examples that we can resolve some of these matters, even though we are not yet there, even though we claim we have a whole institute, a whole university, so I'm told, of forensics. The point is, it's not enough to have, it's better we resolve. So in conclusion, forensic science, as I say, stands as a beacon of hope, solving even the most challenging and long-standing criminal cases. It's a field, as I said, that constantly evolves, pushing the boundaries of what is possible, and it plays a pivotal role in upholding the principles of justice, truth, and closure for victims and their families. So as we move forward, we must continue to invest in forensic research, in education, in training to ensure that the vital tool remains a cornerstone of our efforts to ensure a just and safer society. Ladies and gentlemen, that comes to the conclusion. As I said, find this book. There's a lot I would have loved to explain to you. Find this book at lubogo.org or suegeneslawup.com, and let's demystify some of these challenges that have hit our nations left, right, and center. Once again, my name is Isaac Christopher Lubogo, and thank you for your attention. God bless you.